the anchor, the major anchor community organisation in Lawrence Weston, I would be crazy to not have a close relationship with it. Nearly everything I do comes through ambition for this area.
I've worked in community regeneration for about 20 years. There's lots of areas where people say it's resident-led or residents at the heart of this, but actually what you find is because there's lots of money involved, it's the City Council or other people or other agencies who are kind of pulling the strings, whereas here it really feels that local people are in control, have got a say. They're clear that their opinion is the most important, and I don't know, it's a very refreshing, and it makes things very dynamic and a much sort of clearer environment to work in.
It's grassroots, it's come from the bottom up, and it's interesting that as a councillor, we are just there to kind of help smooth things on. We're not there to tell people what to do. So it's actually easier in a way working here than it is in other parts of the ward, because other parts of the ward quite often need more guidance and they don't necessarily have the resources.
The youth and the residents do understand a bit more about what goes on outside in the Bristol area, and I think a lot of that is down to groups like Ambition, Lawrence Weston, explaining to them through the planning group, through the planning housing, that they have a right to talk about this and they have a right to make a difference.
I realised that there was a terrifically strong community here, and as their name suggests, very ambitious to improve the well-being of their community. And I understood that often these projects go ahead and one never really knows quite whether they're aiming in the right direction or not. And with my own sort of slightly academic background, I thought, well, wouldn't it be great if we could study something of Lawrence Weston before some of these big projects happen, such as the hub, such as new housing and so on, and then follow these aspects, if you like, of community well-being over a longer period of time to see how these changes impact on, hopefully beneficially, on the community.
What's really changed Lawrence Weston for the better for elderly people, mums and dads, is Lidl's. It's just transformed the average shopping bill.
So we're now on what used to be the old demolished college site in Lawrence Weston. As you can see, we now have a new Lidl flagship store delivering services to the residents. This came about after years of campaigning by big local residents and Ambition Lawrence Weston, and by encouraging the landowner at the time, local authority, to consider bringing a supermarket and not just obliterate the place with housing. So we did a lot of work on campaigning and attracting supermarkets to become interested in coming to this site.
What's transformed it, or I think will transform it for the kids, is the BMX park. That's phenomenal.
It's cost about £100,000 of funding. So we've worked in partnership with Bristol City Council, who own the land, Access Sport from London, different benefactors and philanthropists, most of them coming from Bristol.
Getting the supermarket open, that was a massive achievement, but that wouldn't have happened if you hadn't have had that community cohesion. There was a belief that actually, yeah, we can get things done if we want to. You know, the pushing forward, the progress with regard to the community hub, getting a say, getting the community-led housing project started, getting the BMX track reopened, it's all sort of showing that the community's got a bit more power.
Growing up in Lawrence Weston, we were fearful of outsiders, apprehensive outsiders, very much groups that weren't part of the area come in to try and help us as youths, as sort of children of the area. And as such, we rebelled and pushed them away. I think with Lawrence Weston and Ambition Lawrence Weston being a trusted community organisation, those groups now come in, they come to Lawrence Weston for guidance, and then that help, and which is much needed, is then pushed out through the group into the right areas, and is trusted by the demographic of the area.
At present, the population is around about 7,200, all sharing around about 3,200 homes. With the new developments that are online to come to Lawrence Weston, we could see in excess of 350 new family homes coming to the area. So if you times that by 3, 4 perhaps, you'll see it's quite a substantial increase in residents. That's one of the reasons why we're involved in many other projects, to provide the infrastructure and the services that we're going to require, because obviously more residents will impact on the limited services we've got.
And obviously one of the big challenges was the removal of the customer service point, where a lot of people went for help to do with housing, paying bills, paying council tax. That's gone now. So yeah, there are definitely challenges, mostly related to local government cuts.
As a group going forward into their community, I think they've been very successful with their initial community plan, achieving 70% in the first few years of what they set out to do. I think they need to keep that momentum going. Otherwise, you know, people can be very fickle in the sense that it just fades into the background as being just another organisation in the area. And I think that if that happens, it will fail in what it's about. As I mentioned earlier on, it's about bringing a continuity to all the groups coming in, a sort of a hub.
Certainly other parts of my ward see our Ambition Lawrence Weston as a model really within the community. I think people know it's the go-to place.
It's massively influential within the community, and again the big local steering group is resident led. The workers that have been sent out there they've always been key in getting community involvement. They haven't led from the top, it's always been from the bottom.
Community-led housing is much more about meeting local community needs, giving access to local people, making sure that local people aren't excluded from different types of housing and have a long-term stake in managing and maintaining that development.
It's no good designing an energy future that doesn't involve the people and doesn't recognise it as a tool. Otherwise we'll end up in a very much fragmented community where we've got wealthy people that have got the support and education to actually access that, and poorer communities without resources and support that never get those benefits and pay more for their energy as a result of that. I think it's about investing in communities, investing in people so that they can access these tools, and putting them at the heart of that means that it's better for everybody. Being able to access people like Andrew Garrard, who's designed some of the biggest wind turbines in the world, onto the board of Ambition Community Energy. And I think it's about that mix of community-led and expertise that makes Ambition Lawrence Weston special.
Well, I think it seems pretty sustainable now because they've got the right approach. They are very much trying to lead, which makes it easier because they're not so reliant on the council to provide the services. That is probably what it is, it's resilience. So it's community resilience and being able to say, well, whatever happens, if the money dried up tomorrow, we would still have resources that we could sort of self-sustain.
I think the big local legacy is there already. I think there's enough achievement to leave a legacy. So I think that's great to see. I think just continued economic change and change to people's lives. I think with the big local one, working with Ambition, as we mentioned, supermarkets and things like that, provision and energy saving initiatives where fuel poverty is obviously affecting these people, is making an impact on lives. And I think without the big local and the big local money, if I dare say it, that wouldn't be happening, or it would be very hard to achieve that without that nice, hefty pot of initial startup fund money, to allow this to go forward. A big thank you to the big local, if that's possible. Again, I personally, I came in. I grew up in the area. I came to an ambition meeting with the initial community plan, and I heard about the big local money, and then speaking to some of the individuals that inspired me to become a councillor, I decided to become a councillor there and then, and to represent my area. So, and because of that, I hope to have changed the demographic within the council a little bit and try and, thankfully the age has come down and it's become a bit more representation.
Lawrence Weston, to me, I was born across the road. I've lived here all my life, and to me it's home. And it's getting back to a little bit more like it used to be when I was a youngster.